When you play the adult game of rock, paper, scissors, scissors implies that less can be more. Is that truly the case? You betcha. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, lead, and inspire. And the last couple of videos I've made, I've endeavored to show you that rock, paper, scissors is not only a kid's game, but also a formula for success. In the two previous videos that I just made, rock describes having a singleness of purpose of something that matters. It means putting your ladder against a wall, and then when you get to the wall and you look over the top, the thing that you achieved was something that was worthwhile. Too many times people confuse activity with results. Well, they'll be climbing the ladder, they get to the top, did they get the results they really needed or wanted? So make sure that you don't confuse activity with results. Make sure that the objective that you're pursuing is a rock, is something that you can stand behind, is something that you can own, embrace, embody. That's where you want to put your ladder, against that wall and not the wrong wall. That's the rock. Paper covers rock. All right, let's talk about paper. Paper, quickly, just to review, is you got to write your goals down. You have to make them clear. You have to make them visible around you, and you have to measure your results. These are all uses of paper that will help you cover the rock, the objective that you have that really matters. Which brings us to today's video, which is the scissors. And the scissors cuts things, cuts the paper. Well, let's talk about the scissors in terms of cutting things out that we don't need, that less is more. Now, let me give you a couple of quick examples, all right? First of all, back in the day when I actually had some hair follicles, getting a haircut, cutting less was more. At least people used to tell me that. All right, hey, I like your haircut, looks good. Not hearing that so much today. It's like people say, hey, like your scalp, okay? But I digress. The point is, less can be more. Now, I'm not going to take time with you right here, right now, with things that you hear everybody saying about, oh, you're spending so much time on social media, oh, you're looking at your phone all the time, is that really moving you forward? You're focusing on what this guy says or what that guy says. I'm not going to spend time saying that to you because I just spent time saying that to you, so it's not necessary. So let's move on to some other things, all right? First of all, you need to eliminate distracting activities and people that don't serve your burning desire. If you don't eliminate them, you at least need to cut and trim. And I want to give you an example, and this is one that I give to you with really a heavy heart. I have a buddy that I've known for a number of years that when I was in the biggest depths of being down, and that was, a few years ago, he came to my aid and helped me with both enthusiasm and things that I needed to help me out monetarily, maybe a little bit, some encouragement a little bit, that type of thing. Well, now the situation has kind of reversed itself. He's an older guy, he's living on disability now. He's got his son living with him who's in his 40s, that from what I've seen is kind of not a real positive influence and really a drag on his life. I mean, he works, but he doesn't help support my friend. My friend pays for everything. And, I say to myself, you need to get rid of this kid. I mean, I recognize he's your son, but how many different times are you going to let him bring you down? And when I talk about, I'm not talking about one instance. I'm talking about he wrecked his truck. I'm talking about he gets into physical fights. He's been arrested for assaulting his own father, for not chipping in, with the rent and the food and so on and so forth. I mean, there are so many, and every time I talk to my buddy, he's always saying, oh, my son this, my son that, so on and so forth. And one of the things one of my rules is I don't talk to people about their intimate relationships unless somebody asks me. All right, and typically people aren't going to ask you. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a guy that's saying, oh, my girlfriend, she did this and she did that and so on and so forth. And then you go ahead and you say something like, oh, yeah, she's no good. You really got to get rid of that. And then 10 minutes later, they get back together. They forget what they were fighting about, but they do remember what you said in terms of getting rid of, and that ruins the relationship. So I try to avoid doing things like that. But with this particular friend of mine, there was like some physical consequences. I mean, he had to actually go to the hospital. There was actually an arrest made. There was actually an assault. And it wasn't just a single thing. And so many, and just so many different times. And every time I talk to him on the phone, the conversation is always the same. So how are you, he says, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great. How are you doing? Well, I'm not doing so good, and then I hear the same whine about my son this, my son that, and finally one day I just said to him, look, I'm an outside person, I don't like to get into things like this, but you need to get rid of him. I know that you love him, but you're not helping him by letting him use you as a crutch, and you're not helping yourself because he's bringing you down. He's kicking, kicking the crutch out from under you so that you're falling down. And I said that to him, and he said, yeah, I know you're right. But then he continued on and on and on with that same relationship and still has it to this very day. So I made the decision that, I can't be talking to him on the phone very much for a very long period of time. That doesn't mean I forgot what he did for me, which was considerable. But on the other hand, like they say, when the mask comes down in the airplane, make sure you have, you're receiving oxygen before you give it to the kids. I have to make sure that I'm in a good space before I go and try and help him out. And my point is, I set aside a time every week when I pick up the phone, I give him a call, and I limit the amount of time I'm going to speak with him, because he did help me a great deal, and I do respect that. But the point is, I have to move on, he has to move on, and I'm not helping him, he's certainly not helping me, so I'm not cutting him out. What I'm doing is I'm using the scissors and I'm just doing a little trimming, okay? In fact, I'm doing a lot of trimming, right? You've got to take those kinds of scenarios and get rid of them, whether they're what Joey's doing on social media, or the problems that your friend has that are so obvious to the outside observer. I mean, anybody would see that his son is just wrecking his life, yet he continues to hold on like it's an addiction, and I know how he feels. I mean, I feel that way, of course, about Eli. I mean, I'm here for him through good and bad, and no matter what he does, I love him, whether I love him because it's something good or I love him because it's something bad. I may not like him all the time, but I always love him. All right? I always love him, and that's the position. But sometimes you've just got to make that move, and if you're not going to cut, you certainly have to snip. All right? So in that particular case, just like the haircut, less is more. Let's talk about a different area. One of the things that we, in this formula, rock, paper, scissors, what you're doing is the key thing is focus, your burning desire. Have that in your mind, have things all around you to constantly remind you of that. Make sure your ladder's up against the right building, so you're doing the right thing, so you have clarity. And once you have clarity, boom, then you can really move forward. But sometimes you run into the roadblock. And part of running into the roadblock, and I've gone over this before, but it's so important that it deserves repetition. Repetition is retention. When you are troubled with a particular issue, and of course you've tried consciously to solve that issue, you tried this, you tried that, so on and so forth, and you've come to the conclusion this is still the objective I want to have, but right now I'm not seeing anything, that I've done in the past that's bringing me there from point A to point B that's going to get me to that end result. And then you have to call upon the infinite minds to get some inspiration, to get the infinite partner to work with you. The infinite partner wants to work with you. All right, you have that singleness of purpose. So you've separated that one thought from the 60,000 or so other thoughts. But you want to be successful in your communication with the infinite mind. So you want to communicate clearly what end result you want. You don't want to go over the things that you've done and failed at. Not a particularly good grammatical sentence, but you get my point. You don't want to go over the things that where you've not been successful. You want to focus on the end result only. Less is more. Why? You're singling out that thought with your partner. Don't give your partner too much to think about. Give your partner a bullseye so that the infinite partner can zero in on solving your particular issue. And when you do that, then you open up the transmission, the communication, where the infinite partner can come from different angles of things that you hadn't really thought of, because if you thought of them, you already done them, right, that you hadn't thought of, and that will spark an idea, that will create a circumstance. And less is more by not giving the things that you failed. Just focus on the positive, the end result. That allows that communication to come forth, and it doesn't come forth every night, and it also comes in bits and pieces, so make sure you capture those. Go over this every time. It's critical that you work that way, that you recognize that in this particular case, less is more. All right? The stronger your focus on things that matter, the more successful you're going to be. Which brings us to multitasking, which is one of the worst sins committed by man today. For some reason, we all have it in our mind that we can do 38 different things at once. And actually, you can. But when you do that, you greatly reduce the quality of the thing that you're doing. You might think, well, I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. Actually, what you're doing is you're robbing Peter and you're robbing Paul. Keep your focus on the one thing. Be like a surgeon. A surgeon may have many different functions to perform during an actual operation, but he or she has to focus on being excellent on each little step of the way in order to make sure that that operation is a success. And they're not focusing on 12 steps down the road. I'm focusing on this one step I have to perform right now, or I don't get to the other steps. Does that make sense? So, once again, rock, paper, scissors. Become a rock. Have that purpose. Have a worthwhile purpose. Make sure that it's a worthwhile purpose. Make sure that you're putting your ladder against the building that you want to climb to. Don't get to the top of the ladder and look over and say, this isn't where I want to be. People don't spend enough time focusing on what's important for them. Secondly, to achieve that, make sure that you enhance your focus by having it all around you, by writing it down, by being clear. Clarity helps you to achieve your goals. Complexity is the enemy of achievement. When we talk about breaking things down into the smallest components. Make each component simple. Break it down. And finally, the scissors. Make sure that you cut or trim, from your life the things that are distracting you from that one single focus that is most important to you. I know you got more than one focus in your life. You got your family, you got your spiritual side, you got your business side. You know, it doesn't matter which one we're talking about. When you're focusing on the family side, focus on the family side. All right? But sometimes you need to snip a little bit or cut a little bit, or in some cases eliminate altogether distracting elements, because you become what you think about all the time. And if you're thinking about extraneous things, don't be surprised if you don't achieve great things because you're not focused on them. So once again, think, just to give you a different paradigm on the success formula: rock, paper, scissors. It works for me. It will also work for you. And because we never end a meeting on a philosophical note, let's get out there and take charge. I'm Eli's dad.